Good morning.
Judge, in your response to the different questions and comments you made, what I'm concerned about is, and I'll address the indigent legal services in a moment for the civil part, but, as a practicing attorney, I get in and out of the courts quite a bit in Nassau County, and I can't begin to tell you the decimation of our court system in Nassau County over the last several years. In our surrogates court alone, we lost approximately 35 operational staff, which resulted in limited cashier hours, limited record room access, and some of those things have been cured a little bit down the line. In our Supreme Court, many parts are down on a daily basis because there's no court officers or clerks to staff them. So while we give this free indigent legal services in the civil parts, it's all well good when the litigant comes in with the free attorney, but there's no courtroom to appear in. We have one clerk covering 3 parts. So they run from one courtroom to the next, or they're handling 3 calendars at the same time. So when you indicated that a lot of these costs that OCA is incurring over the last several years has to do with personnel and salaries, when many of the, and I'm not going to put myself in the middle of contract negotiations, but many of those unions that you're talking about, court officers and clerks specifically, they've gotten 0 contracts over the last several years. So I don't understand where there's an increase in salaries, because they haven't gotten anything. So yet there's a $15 million bump in the free civil legal services. So I'd like to get an idea from you which driven that uptick to justify.
I'm sorry, which what?
What is driving the uptick in the civil legal services to warrant another $15 million?
Well, we don't have a contract with the Nassau Court Employees Union. That's correct. Unfortunately, we don't. We would like to have a contract with them. We have 12 labor unions in the court system, and at the moment we have contracts with 8 of the 12. So with respect to the employees in those unions, they've received salary increases, modest salary increases over the last couple of years, and that's the reason for our increasing salary costs. We have contracts with 2/3 of our unions, but not in Nassau, unfortunately, and hopefully we will reach agreement with them shortly. But yes, what you're describing in the courts in Nassau, there have been consequences of our reduced staffing levels. And I'm sure you've accurately described some of those based on your firsthand experience. And, that's my concern, is that and I think there have been improvements over the last year or two. And I very much want to be able to continue that trend and be able to improve from year to year, which is why I'm very much arguing for asking you and pleading with you to provide this additional money that I firmly believe we need to continue improvement and to mitigate some of the problems that you're describing in the courts in Nassau County, for example.
And Judge, just to go in a different direction for a second, the bail system, I know that a process has been instituted. I think it started in the city, that when bail is set on a defendant, it could go to another judge of the same court who's going to review the judge's bail. Now, it just seems odd to me that a judge of the same jurisdiction in the same court is acting as an appellate review of a judge's bail. Legally, how did that come about?
Let me explain it to you. It's just in New York City, by the way, not in your district. There's a review if it's requested by the defendant or the defense counsel. There's review not to a judge of the same jurisdiction, but to a judge in the Supreme Court. And this is for misdemeanor cases only the low-level offenses. And it's perfectly authorized under the law. It's Section 530.30 of the Criminal Procedure Law. If you take a look at it, gives Supreme Court the authority, upon an application by the defendant, to review bail that was set by the lower court judge. So it was based on that statutory authority.
Thank you, Judge. And just a last follow-up on my question before. Can you give us just a quick overview of the justification for the $15 million increase on the indigent legal fund? Which driven that uptick in that cost over last year?
The justification for it is the last installment of a 5-6-year plan to reach $100 million for civil legal services in this state, which, by the way, doesn't solve the problem of the justice gap. There will still be multitudes of people who do not have lawyers and won't have lawyers, but because of this money, for example, in this fiscal year, there'll be over 450,000 people who have lawyers because of the money that we're providing. And this would be the very last installment that will fulfill the goal that was set 5-6 years ago to reach $100 million for civil legal services. And we were able to add money to it in more difficult budget years, more difficult fiscal years than this year. So we feel that it's very important. It benefits hundreds of thousands of people who need help throughout the state. It levels the playing field in the courts, and we feel it's very important, and it's why we're urging the legislature to provide that funding.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Chairman.